Welcome to Podcast Done For You, the show where we make it as easy as possible for you to make the right choices to advance your podcasting career. So let's get started on the show. Welcome, everybody. I know we've got someone from Melbourne here today, so I'm on the Central Coast. I know there's someone from Sydney here, so let us know in the chat where you're from. It's always nice to be friendly and understand where people are coming from. I know we've invited people from all over the place, so it's always nice to see where people are popping in from. So keep us updated on that. And I'm just going to make sure I've got that sitting on the side here. Now, everyone can see my screen, I assume. Just give me some thumbs up. Yep, good. Okay, great. I've got that. All right, well, look, I am going to get underway with today's presentation. So welcome, everybody. The presentation, which is pretty self-explanatory in the sense that we're talking about podcasts and done for you podcasts. And the whole idea is really, what do you do a podcast for? It's about clients, it's about credibility, it's about conversations and all of those creating opportunities to grow your business. So I'm going to walk you through a bunch of things. There will be opportunities for you to ask questions later on, but if you get any questions in the meantime, please put them in the chat. I'll try and take a look at that. My chat is over onto the side, so if I'm looking over to the side, it's occasionally to do that, so bear with me as we go through that. So all right, just to kick things off, I wanted to give you a big number. It's an important number, 1.5 billion, because believe it or not, that is how many people are listening to podcasts every single month. 1.5 billion people. It is a huge, huge number, and that is growing. So the opportunity for you to be a part of that is massive. People think that there are too many podcasts. It is not true at all. In fact, there are, we estimate, no more than 225,000 active business podcasts. So if you one of those 225,000, as I am and as a number of people that I work with are, then it's a 1.5 billion audience that you can gain from. And remember, people listen to more than one podcast as well. So that is a very significant number. What I would say to that is 99% of podcasts fail. And that's why I sort of talked about active podcasts in the business sector, because there are many, many that do not get past 6 episodes, and the majority never make it past 20 episodes. So what we're going to talk about today is not only how you can make that happen so you don't fall into that 99%, in fact, you make it to the 1%, but also why there is so much value in podcasts. So let me go through a few things that we're going to talk about in this session. So we're going to talk about, as I said, how the 1% can take advantage, why everybody stops, and exactly what success looks like. These are important things to understand, and success is particularly important because we all want that in business. At the end of the day, you're doing this so your business grows. That's what the reason for going into the podcast is all about. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, I won't dwell too much on this, but I think my parents, for some reason, bought me a crystal radio set when I was little. And for whatever reason, that had a massive impact on me. I've still got that crystal radio set sitting somewhere. I worked extensively in the media for a number of years after studying broadcast journalism at university. I've worked at 2UE in its heyday, for those of you that are familiar with 2UE. When people like Laws, Jones, Zamanek, and those sorts of people were on the station. I worked in various media organizations, and eventually I also worked in the corporate sector, not-for-profit sector, and I've had my own business now for over 14 years. And Podcast Done For You, which has born out of that, has been going for a couple of years now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the learnings that I've had from all of that experience as we go through there. And you can also see two of my two beautiful dogs that are sitting there on the side. Okay, let's get into the main reason why you're here. Why podcasting is the best marketing tool for business. Well, I'm going to go through a few of these things as we talk. But let me just say to you this, that with the experience that I've had and it's over 30, well, it's probably 35 years of experience now in the media, in business. This is by far the best tool that you can have for your business. Why? Well, everyone's looking for a marketing tool that is going to generate new opportunities, new leads for you. What the podcast does is it creates a huge amount of content consistently that can get used across multiple platforms, that enables people to engage with it whenever they want to, and it gives you the opportunity to keep growing and talking to not only new people, but your existing people. And that's something we'll get to in a little bit. But I think people underestimate the value of your existing audience as well as growing a new audience. Now, particularly at a time when we have so much AI dominating things, and I'm sure you've all had various use of AI tools, and you might want to pop in the chat what's your favorite AI tool that you use in your business. I can tell you my little secret one is, well, I believe not too big a secret. It's called My Ninja, where it aggregates a whole lot of the various AIs from ChatGPT to you name it, all of them sitting in there. So that's a little tip, extra tip, bonus tip for you. My Ninja, look that one up. But interested to know what you are using in your business. But one of the things about having an AI is that a lot of people are using it without feeding it the authentic content in the first place. And feeding authentic content can often be very time consuming. It's hard to do. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. Well, it certainly does when you do a podcast and you're having a conversation, because it's about authentic storytelling. Anyone that you have a conversation with, if you think about it, you trade stories with one another, you share insights and information, and a podcast is really a way of encapsulating that idea. Now, I do say here it's a platform for thought leaders to make a difference. I think all of you that are visiting today want to be a thought leader if you're not already. And the thing about being a thought leader is that you are not a thought leader unless you have an audience. It can't just be your team. It needs to be a bigger audience if you want to have a real impact. And I think for us, in certainly in terms of podcasting, impact is a big thing that we want to make as well. Now, I'm going to come back to this whole idea of cascading effect in a bit more detail, but needless to say that podcasting isn't just about putting it out on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It is about what it feeds to lots of other places. And that's something to consider, because you are not just buying that. You are, when you have a podcast, you are creating opportunities in so many more spaces. So I'm just going to go through as well a few things, but I want you to please, if you've got your phone, if you're on your phone, and I know some of you are and watching this, you can note down the email address if you like, or the tiny URL. This is access to some resources that you can have for this session as well. So, and there's some bonus material that we're not going to get into in this session that you can take there. So please take an opportunity to take that down. If it's a bit too hard, and I know one of you is out there walking to be able to do that while you're doing this, please let me know afterwards, and I'm more than happy to send that to you separately so you've got that link to that. So I'll give you another moment or two to do that. Hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to grab that off the screen now, because I want to make sure that you've got all of these resources to go through separately, as well as some bonus stuff that will absolutely help you with podcasting and all of the information that you need to get a podcast underway, including equipment lists and things like that that I often get asked for. So now, who can benefit and how? This is an important question. I get asked this all the time. And the truth is that most people can have a podcast. And I'm almost guaranteeing that everybody here today, if you're thinking about having a podcast, well, this is something that you can have absolutely. So it's, we tend
if you're sharing your screen, nobody can see it.
It's gone away, has it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let me go back to the share screen there a minute, because it's important that you do see that. Let's just do that again. How's that? You seeing that screen now?
That's it.
Fantastic. Okay. Did you miss the resources?
Yep, everybody
Okay.
missed all
All
of
right.
it.
We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back here. So there we go. There's the resources. So please grab that, and thank you for letting me know that. sitting here thinking it was sharing and it clearly wasn't. So there's that. So please grab that. We've got some time. I'll let everyone take a snapshot of it, and you'll be able to get access to those to that information. You can do that now or do it afterwards, whatever you like. So hopefully you've got all of that. I won't bother you too much with the other slides that were there before because I pretty much talked to what was in them. So we're going to go forward from here. So, okay. So who can benefit and how? So I want to bring you up and show you a few things. I'm going to put all of these up on screen, but I'm not going to talk to all of them because that will take too long. But I wanted to give you some examples of some of the podcasts that I've worked on and to give you a bit of an insight into one of them. So here, just going through the three very quickly. So David, the bucket list accountant, kind of speaks for itself. He talks about accounting in a way that's more about bucket lists. So it's very easy for an average business owner or even just a family to understand and to put things in a context that makes sense for you. Get Digitally Enabled is a podcast out of the US that we look after. That's all about putting technology into medium-sized businesses. And Unblocked is all about well, it's a mixture of energy, blockchain, and Web3. So that's a really interesting one. If you're into any of that stuff, I recommend you listen to that one. It's certainly got some amazing people that come on that. But I want to tell you just about one other case study because it's an interesting one. And whilst these are sort of typical professional service-based businesses, we also did a podcast for a child psychologist. And the reason I wanted to tell you about Andy's podcast, which is a really interesting one because he talks about being the show is called Being Comfortably Uncomfortable. And the reason I wanted to tell you about that is what's very interesting about that show. It's created a couple of opportunities for him. So first of all, in putting out that show, it's created media opportunities. In fact, while we were recording one of the episodes, he got a message saying, could you be available to for a camera crew to come around and film you in a few, in half an hour, which of course he did and did appear on what is now the project that no longer exists on Channel 10, but that was one of his many media appearances that happened. But also one of the great things that happened, and this happened with David as well as another good example, where people that in David's case, it was a coffee shop. In Andy's case, it was actually about someone who knows him and wanted to come back to him and say how valuable the podcast was, even though they actually come and see him occasionally as for their child, because being a child psychologist, again explaining that what it did was it gave them some information to access in between conversations that they might have at a professional level. And we all have that, right? We can't be with our clients 24/7, but we can be if we've got a podcast. We can have material that they can engage with. Not only that, it is the best way to enable people to share things. It's very hard for anyone, and I'm sure you've all been to networking groups, and it's very hard when you go into those and people say, oh, can you refer someone to such and such? Bringing up those conversations, it doesn't happen that easily. But when you go to someone and say, hey, you should check out this podcast, it might be interesting, you're not selling them anything. You're simply telling them this might be of interest to you. So it is much easier to have that conversation in a networking sense as well. So imagine going into, BNI, for example, and you say, all I want everyone to do is to subscribe to my podcast, or I'd love one of you to comment on one of my episodes. It's not a big intrusion on people doing it. It's an easy way for them to share, and it's an easy way for you to build your audience. But like I said, it's an easy way to have a conversation with existing clients and make it easy for them to share. So that's the important thing I want you to get out of that. There is a range of podcasts that we look after, many of them on the website that we have. Some of them are internal, by the way. Some podcasts are more for team or for certain particular audiences, so they're not necessarily always public. So always think about the opportunities that exist with that. So let's get into why they fail, because I want you to be able to avoid this because it's a really important thing. Time and overwhelm is huge. Now, like a lot of things, we get really excited when it's something shiny and new and we want to dive into it. But what you quickly realize with a podcast is every episode probably takes you on average 6 hours, because by the time you think about what you're going to do on the show, by the time you record the show, you get the show edited and you get the show published, 6 hours is probably a very reasonable amount of time, and it can sometimes take more, particularly early on in the piece. So suddenly you're spending nearly a day a week of your time on a podcast that is taking you away from what you do normally and what you love doing normally. Let's face it, you might enjoy a little bit of learning how to do this, but it quickly takes you away from your main area of expertise and what your business is built around. So that's one of the primary reasons why it fails. Don't worry, we're going to give you how we can make sure that that doesn't happen for you, but I just want to talk to you about the reality of it. Consistency is important in podcasting. If you decide to have a show coming out every 2 weeks or even more regularly, you need to be consistent with it, because once you start missing those things, people start finding other things to listen to and assume that it's not around anymore. They won't keep coming back and, oh, is it going to be out this week, or is it maybe it's going to be next week? Or, how many times do you go back and try before you go, well, it's clearly not happening again? Consistency is everything. And I can tell you, when you have the time and overwhelm issue, then consistency goes out the window very quickly. So it is something to really think about, and it's why a lot of people fail, because what happens is you miss 1 week and suddenly you think, oh, okay, well, I had a few things on, and then it comes easier to miss it a second week and a third week, and suddenly it disappears. So it is really important to do that. The other reason why 99% of them fail is the authority positioning. This is a really important consideration that I don't want you to miss out on, because a lot of people start podcasts and they immediately go, we're going to have a guest on the program, which is fine, except when you have a guest on the program, you stop being the expert. Just think about that for a moment. It is a skill within itself to be able to interview someone or have a conversation with someone and monitor all the things that you have to monitor to make sure the podcast is recording and everything is working properly. It doesn't happen easily. Now, think about it in terms of, we all probably have seen the Today Show at one time or another. Now, if you look at Carl is not an expert in anything except being a host. And you look at any of the radio programs that you might listen to, particularly the talkback radio programs you might listen to, the people who are hosting the show are not the experts. So why is it that people, when they try and do a podcast, assume that they can do both positions? It is incredibly difficult. It is a skill within itself to be able to host the show well. And it's why many of the podcasts fall over, because they suddenly realize that they're spending all their time promoting somebody else, being a supporter of them, or even more so in some cases, just being a total fan of the person they've got on the show. And they're no longer the expert that the podcast was established for in the first place. Again, we're going to come to how you get around that in just a moment. So here's the important thing: what success is going to look like for you. Okay, so it's important to know that you shouldn't be alone in it, that you need to be positioned as the expert. And the best way to do that, to be positioned as the expert, is to have someone that is hosting it for you, to do exactly what Carl does for the Today Show and what any number of radio announcers do for the experts that come on their program. It's to engage with them in a conversation so that they are the expert. It's a really important consideration to have. Now, I can tell you that many of the people that I work with, the podcasts work on the basis that, and David in the Bucket List Accountant's a good example, where we record a conversation that I host with him. We work out what the topics are, of course, beforehand. And he's the expert on his own show. I'm not there to be the expert. I'm there just to facilitate the conversation. So he is most definitely the expert on his show. Now, with someone like Gemma, for example, who I mentioned in the Unblocked podcast, now she has guests on the program, as does Andy, or I should say Andrew. He also has guests on the program as well, and doesn't stop people from asking questions and engaging directly with them. But it also enables me to come back to them and say, you're also an expert. What do you think? It enables me to also make sure that something is always going to get asked and it's going to have the audience in mind, because it is a skill to be able to think of who is it that you're actually talking to and what level of knowledge do they have. Because often when we engage with peers, we assume a level of knowledge which is right for the peers, but forget that the audience listening in may not have that same knowledge. So there's lots of things that need to happen in that case. That's why having a co-host is there. it's time efficient as well. So just to give you an insight into how that might work, as an example, with David, we record for 2 hours, 4 times a year. That gives him, we break that up into six 20-minute episodes, and that gives him a podcast every 2 weeks. So out of 4 2-hour recording sessions, he gets 24 episodes. That's it, 8 hours of recording time in a year, and he's done. Everything else is done for him. So it's time efficient in that way. So it means that you don't have to worry about all the technology and subscriptions. Let me tell you, when it comes to podcasting, there are lots of things, and you'll see them in the resources that I gave you earlier to access. There are lots of things that you want to access, from recording to editing to publishing. And there's also all the bits and pieces of technical knowledge. What microphone do I use? What do I do if this changes? That's all stuff that you don't really want to worry about, quite frankly. And again, what you don't want to be doing is thinking, oh, well, I'll just get someone else to do this little bit and someone to do that bit, because now you're playing a role of a coordinator and you're trying to work out who are the best people in skills that you don't actually have much knowledge on. So success to me looks like not having to worry about any of those things. We do everything for you. And so I think that's an important thing for you to consider, whether you do a podcast with me or you do a podcast with somebody else. I just want you to make sure that you tick these boxes, because if you try and do it alone, if you try and be the host and talk by yourself or even to a guest, you're going to find all of these challenges that are going to come in front of you. And I want you to try and avoid that. So some of the resources will tell you some of these things of what to use, but it's one thing to know what to use. It's another thing to be able to use it. So keep that in mind as you consider your podcast journey. So I want to come to this cascading impact a little bit more. So what do I mean by this, and why is podcasting so important? Because podcasting is not, as I said before, just about simply that high level of the podcast itself. Yes, that is incredibly important, that you want people to listen to the show and promote that. But what it also gives you is, for example, reels that you can pull out. Now we do a mixture of things for different people. Some are video based, some are audio based, some are a mixture of both. Whatever it is, you can still create reels that you can use on social media, that you can use on YouTube as well. Now, the value of that is you then have a 30 to 60 second piece, or sometimes 90 seconds piece of video or audio content that can get used to tease people into finding out more. Now, remember, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to go and listen to the podcast. It gives you material to educate and nurture an audience in lots of different ways. So that's just one aspect. You get a transcript, and a transcript, again, had some AI tools thrown in the background there. And what you can do with a transcript is, now that you've got authentic content, you can have it help produce posts, produce newsletters, produce articles, produce blog posts, lots of different things that you can create from it. So I think what you've got to keep in mind that from the podcast, you have video, audio, and text-based and even graphic-based content that can then fulfill your social media calendar as one part, newsletters, to email to database, email sequencing that you might have, keeping people informed in between, that this might be clients that you have. It could also be new people that you're wanting to engage with and say, hey, before we have a meeting, could I ask you to check out this podcast episode, because I think it might be of value and help you understand a little bit more about what we do. So that can be another way of doing it. It can help you open up doors, because it's, as I said before, not just in a networking sense, but we all have people we'd like to have a conversation with, that their doors are shut to us for one reason or another, because they see a sale coming a mile away. But what if you went to them and said, hey, I'm just recorded an episode of my podcast on this topic. I'm really interested in your opinion. Would you mind giving me some feedback? Now, you could also ask them to be a guest on the program. There are lots of variations of that, but it's a way of starting a conversation with someone whose door might otherwise be shut, because you're playing into their ego a little bit more, rather than asking them to come and buy from you. And you just want to start the conversation so that eventually it goes to the next level. So this is one of the many things that you can do with a podcast. So I think this is an important aspect to understand, that is very much a cascading effect. that one episode produces lots and lots of material. It also produces opportunities to ask your audience, hey, what else would you like me to cover in future episodes? Have you got a suggestion for a guest? Let's do a poll based on what's happened in the podcast. So there is so many things to think about. One of the things that I want to let you sit with as well is that all the LinkedIn experts will tell you you should be posting on LinkedIn 3 times a week. Now, that is a lot of time doing that because I know from having spoken to a lot of people that the average from the moment you say you should post to it being posted is about 2 hours worth of your time. 2 hours worth of your time, 3 times a week, 6 hours of your time. Add that up and how many dollars that might be. Because if the average person is posting, let's just say you only post twice a week, because I'm going to make the maths easy. And let's say you pay yourself $250 an hour. You should really probably be double that. It's $1,000 a week of your time at a minimum that is being spent on just on posting on LinkedIn. The great thing about having the podcast is that now becomes dead easy. You've got all that authentic content, and if you've got team members that work with you, be they virtual assistants or actual team, they might be able to take it over because you've given them the authentic content. All they've got to do is post it. But even if you do it yourself, it takes minutes rather than hours. So it's saving you a lot of energy, and that's just on one platform. So a lot to think about what success looks like because it is saving you huge amounts of time and actually probably saving you money if you think about it in the longer run. So part of the podcast, part of what we're doing here today is I want to give you an opportunity to have a discussion about what your podcast might look like. So this is a unique link to book in a 15-minute schedule. This is not a selling opportunity. This is merely a matter of saying, hey, what does your podcast look like? Can we help you in some way, shape, or form? Either steering you in the right direction, or if it's something you want to talk about and see if we can actually work together, I'm more than happy to do that. So please take advantage of that. I'll leave that up for a moment or two so you can definitely do that. In fact, what I want to do now is rather than me just talking to you endlessly for as I could about podcasts, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So if anyone has anything they want to put up in the chat, or you want to come off mute, I'm more than happy for you to do that. So please feel free to do that as you're working through that, and hopefully a few people booking in there to do that. I want to just say to you this as well about podcasting, that I've worked in marketing for, as I said, for over 35 years, and there's always people looking for this so-called magic bullet or golden ticket or whatever you want to call it in marketing, and it just doesn't exist. And I'm going to be brutally honest about that. It doesn't exist. There are things that for a moment or two might give you a little bit of success, but anyone that tells you this is your surefire ticket to be able to do this is kidding themselves. The difference with podcasting is that it's giving you something that is of long-term benefit that benefits in lots of different ways. Okay, so if you're having problems with the booking link, just do me a favor, take a note of that email address. Please just send me an email and I will send you a link afterwards to be able to book in. So that'd be great. Thank you for that, for letting me know that that's been a bit of a problem. We had some problems with, we've had some server problems as well in the last 24 hours. So there's been some issues around the website. So apologies for that. So anything that you've missed and you want to, please use that email address. I'll leave it on screen for another moment or two so you can grab that. What I was saying is that when it comes to marketing, you're looking for something that is going to generate more opportunities for you to engage with more people consistently, and that you want to grow your business. At the end of the day, that's why we're all here, right? We want to grow our business. The one thing about a podcast is that it creates opportunities consistently. Now, we talked about all that cascading effect, which I think is the closest you're ever going to get to a golden ticket that you can have in marketing. But I think it's also about what other opportunities that it presents itself with, because it's not just about growth through, hey, give me new clients or existing clients spending more money. It's also about what new opportunities might await as far as, for example, it could be media coverage, it could be speaking opportunities, it could be partnership opportunities. I think that's a really important one as well to consider. Partnership is a really difficult thing to have in business. And when people get to know you a little bit better and understand you a bit better, this opens up more avenues for those conversations to happen. Indeed, we're also talking to people at the moment about a partnership-based podcast, which is simply where two or three businesses come together and they share the podcast. So that means the advantage of that is that you are amplifying your content. So just to give you a bit of an idea, if I went to any one of you today and I said, my podcast, which is called Biz Bites for Thought Leaders, you can check that one out as well if you want to note that one down. So Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. If you check out that podcast, would you mind sharing that with everyone in your network? Not only would you mind doing that once, would you mind doing that 3 times a week for 12 months? I'm guaranteeing that not a single one of you is going to say yes to that, because it'd be crazy to say yes to that. But if it's a podcast that you are on with someone else, you absolutely will do that. So it's a partnership-based podcast is a really great opportunity for two businesses to work together. They might be complementing one another. You don't have to be in the same thing. For example, it could be an accountant and a real estate agent, or a mortgage broker and a financial person. It could be, there's any number of different combinations. And I'm sure you all have different industries and different kinds of businesses that you engage with on a regular basis, that sometimes you're complementing one another and you actually work together, but you don't have to either necessarily. You might be targeting the same audience for completely different ideas, but it could be that there's a benefit in discussing certain ideas together in a partnership. So for example, lawyers and accountants aren't doing the same thing for their clients, but they have similar issues that they might be talking about in business. And so why not have a podcast together? So a partnership-based podcast is something else to consider as well as we go through all of that. So I think there's just want to, I'm just going to go back here and just say questions. If there's anything else that you want to ask me, please feel free to do that. I just want to say that I've been doing this for a very long time in terms of working in broadcast style media. And the great thing about podcasting is that you have an opportunity to talk to your audience consistently and not be controlled by anyone else. Now, whilst appearing on other people's podcasts is a great thing, I have guests on my program regularly. And again, I should preface that by saying, what am I trying to show myself as an expert on the show? Well, I'm a bit of an exception because I'm just trying to show my skills as leading a conversation and hosting a show. So I'm not trying to be a marketing expert, for example, on my show. I'm merely trying to be a host.
Hi, good. How you doing?
And so what I would say to you is that when it comes to doing your podcast, make sure that not only are you the expert in the program, but make sure that you are using it as an opportunity to engage with people that are going to elevate you and create new opportunities for you as well. So I think they're all really important facets of having a podcast. And as I said, I believe that this is the closest you'll ever get to a golden ticket, not because it instantly gives you a whole bunch of new audience. No, what a podcast gives you is the opportunity to filter into all of those other things that will create those opportunities for you, because it isn't about doing one thing, it's about doing lots of things, and the podcasting is the top of the tree. And it is about building your authority in the space. I think one of the things to think about with a podcast is, how many times have we sat there and listened to someone, watched someone at a conference and gone, well, that could be me. I've got as much knowledge as them. Why aren't I that person? Well, podcasting puts you in that position where you're controlling it. You are your own media outlet. And I think that's an important thing to consider. You are a media outlet, and any business should be a media outlet, because otherwise you're not creating opportunities for people to engage with you on a regular basis. It is those conversations that matter. And it is about sharing stories. Now, if you're worried about content and putting it on there, I guarantee you that any of you have had a conversation in the last few months. You've been to a party, a barbecue, a friend's place, and you've got engaged in a work-based conversation. Really, when it comes down to it, they're the most powerful conversations that you can have. So having it with a co-host enables you to just have a conversation like that. I would say to you, there are two types of podcasts when you're thinking about it as well. And I don't want to bombard you with too much more information. So I'm just going to leave you with this point. There are two types of podcasts. There is the podcast that is the fly on the wall podcast. That is traditionally your entertainment based one. That's where you have your celebrities on there and you are going to be listening in because you're just interested in what those people's lives are. We have a fascination with that. And that extends only into the business stratosphere when you talk about something like Diary of a CEO. Now, I would say to you that Diary of a CEO, I think at last count has 40 people working on that program. Right? So you have to understand that there is a lot involved in putting a program like that together. We're not trying to pitch at that level because that is just, not affordable for most businesses. What I am trying to pitch at is to say to you that the best podcast to have is the one where people that are listening in think that you are talking to them. That is the key to it. It's about having a conversation whereby your audience is sitting there and going, wow, they're talking to me. This resonates with me. I've got some ideas out of this. These are things that I can action. And the great thing is it builds a relationship over a period of time. So to give you an example, a colleague of mine came to me recently and said he was at an event and someone came up to him and said, "Oh, I'm really looking forward to working with you." And he's looking at them going, "I have no idea who you are." And they said, "No, we're not on your database. We've never engaged with you before, but we've been avid listeners of your podcast for a little while. It was just a matter of finding the right timing for us. We're now ready. Let's work together." And these are the kinds of things that can happen because it is an investment over a period of time. To get to that top 1% that we talked about at the beginning is really about having more than 20 episodes of a podcast. We guarantee that you will do that when you work with us because we make it so easy and time efficient for that to happen because we don't want it to fall over. We don't want you to be in that 99% when you do that. So remember, if you're going down that path, that is a really important thing to consider. So, does anyone else have any questions that you want to answer? Anything else that you would like me to talk to or talk about? What I might do is while you are doing that, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the presentation purely because you missed some of those slides, and I'll just let you see a couple of those things so that in case you missed them. So this was just I'll just play through them fairly quickly here, so you've got them there. I really wanted to make this an efficient masterclass. I know we've all got lots of things going on in the day, so I didn't want to take up massive amounts of your time. I really am interested in anyone out there that's watching to have a podcast. Can there be a single person podcast? Is a question. Charles, yes, there can be. And my podcast Done For You, the show, is an example of that. I can tell you it is very, very difficult to do. It is hard to have consistently a conversation, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes, where you are just talking and you're trying not to make it a webinar. Like this is a webinar today, right? I am not trying to make this into what traditionally would be a podcast in the way that that would work. You need to be having a conversation with someone. There are some examples of that where it can work quite nicely, but they are few and far between and difficult to pull off because it is much easier. And that's the value of the co-host, right? Is the co-host is there, so you've got someone to bounce off and someone to prompt you, so it feels like you're talking to someone. So yes, possible, but I don't underestimate how difficult it is to do that consistently and to do it in a way that people enjoy listening to you, that is not you talking at them. Because that's also important as well, that it needs to feel like a conversation. If you're just talking at people, then it's not really a podcast. So try and find that balance in doing it. And I'm more than happy, Charles, to have a further conversation with you about that if you want to find that out. I'll skip through this. This was just me talking when I was telling you a little bit about 2UE and its heyday. But I did want to just put these things up here on the screen. Actually, I think about where we started to catch up on the podcast on all of the things. So, does anyone else have any questions that they want to ask about podcast? Is there anything else that I can facilitate and help you with? in terms of helping your podcast get up and running. There's lots of things to consider. And one of the key things, by the way, is microphone. That is certainly a resource that you want to invest a little bit in. So in those resources that I put up on the screen before, and again, use the email address if there's any problems with that link not working. That the 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 one thing that I should say that you need is a decent microphone. In that resources kit, we do suggest a few, one that is better than others. It is something that if you're going to spend a little bit of money in the podcasting process, spend it on that. But I can tell you the one that we recommend is $240, I think, rough price on, you can get it in Amazon, you can get it in lots of different places as well. So we've included some links in those resources. So it's not a huge investment, but it is worthwhile because I can tell you if you're using earpods, for example, that's a bit of a no-no. I wouldn't use earpods. The quality of that for a podcast is not great. So it is a good thing to invest in. And I'd have to say that even beyond podcasting, it's a great thing to have whenever we all have these days lots of conversations with people on a regular basis online. Having a decent microphone just makes it that much nicer to have those conversations. It makes a real difference compared to some of that tinnier sort of sound that you often get out of those out of the ones that are based on using headsets. Any microphone that's connected to a headset, generally speaking, is not particularly great. That's the little tip that I have for you. For a phone conversation, sure. For anything that you're wanting to record or have a in-depth conversation, and certainly if you're wanting to have a podcast, I would absolutely suggest that you go beyond that. It's a really worthwhile investment to have a decent microphone, particularly one that just plugs in as a USB and can use and is sitting there separately on your desk. It's a nice thing to have. It also shows that you've gone to another level in trying to be professional, and it's a nice thing to be able to do as part of it as well. So that's the one little tip that I put in there. Would you support digital backgrounds? Okay, so it's a good question. My generally what I say to people is try and avoid them if you can. The reason being is they're never perfect unless you have really top level green screens and you have lots of lighting and things, they become difficult. Now, in saying that, you can do it in post-production. One of my clients, in fact, the Get Digitally Enabled podcast is a good example of that, where we have put the background in that they asked us to put in afterwards in post-production. A lot of the recording things that you use, so we don't use Zoom to record a podcast. A lot of the recording places that you use don't really let you have a digital background in there in the first place. There is ways of getting around that. It's a little bit technical, and I'm happy to tell you how to do that separately if you want to, if you want me to teach you how to do that. But it is possible, but it's not great, I would say to you. And I think that having a natural background lets people in. If you think about it, if they came to visit you in your office, what would they see? They're not going to see a digital background. They're going to see something there. I'd suggest always putting yourself in a situation where you're comfortable with people seeing it. Setting out, and maybe if I come out of this in a second, let me just do this. Let me get to the end of this presentation here. In fact, I'll just get out of this. Right. If I'm going to let you in here on the background of mine situation here, and you can even see I normally zoom in a little bit more than this, so you don't even see the window, but I'm going to pull back a little bit, and you can see that there's some lights. I've got my microphone set up here. I'm just in a basic office environment, and so you zoom in here, and now I've got something that looks efficient. But to create this background, I can tell you, letting you in on a few little secrets here. Book stand on that side. Whoops, I had to do it on that way. The book stand here, I think was maybe $25 or something at a Big W, Target, somewhere like that. Pot plants are about the same kind of investment. Books I had. Now the sign on there, you can get signs like that on Amazon. Again, depending on how big you want them, how much you want to spend, maybe it's $150. all up to put this kind of background together and do this is, $300 is probably going to get you everything that you need. So it's not a big investment to do something, and you don't have to do the. You can, you've probably got a bookcase that you could use. You've definitely got books that you can use. There's hardly anyone that doesn't. I'm sure you've got a pot plant that you can use, and you've got a picture you could put on the wall. So you could probably do it from existing resources, and I always think that that looks better. Um, on podcasts with 3+ people, is it too messy to navigate? Again, that's where I think that the value of having a co-host in there, that's something that we do regularly. So I also run a forum once a month, and I usually get about 10, 12 people on that. And that's just that's not necessarily a broadcast thing, but I manage 10, 12 people in a 1 hour forum. So yes, it can be done. No, it's not too many people if you know what you're doing to have that. I would say that if you're having 3 people, you want the podcast to be at least 30 minutes because otherwise it's just not, you're not going to have enough time for people to have a say. But I think that that's an important thing to do. And again, one of the reasons why podcasts fail, right, when you have 2 or 3 or more people, is that someone dominates. And then the other people eventually get upset and go, well, why am I bothering on this podcast when I hardly get to have a say? Again, having someone whose role there is to co-host and make sure everyone's getting a say is really important. It's a bit like if any of you have been in a board meeting, for an organization. Like if there's someone just dominating, you sit there twiddling your thumbs and you think, well, why am I even on this board? A good chair of a board will make sure that everyone gets a say. And it's the same thing if you think about it. Whenever you go to a conference, often there's a panel at the end of a conference. So someone is emceeing that panel, and you have usually 3 or 4 people sitting there, and you get to ask them questions. And usually there's someone moderating that, as I said, to make sure that that is a fairly even spread as well. So that's something also to think about. So I'm very aware that we've already gone a little bit over time, and I thank you everyone for continuing to be online at this. And I'm happy to stick around for another few minutes and answer any questions that you might have. I hope that you will take advantage of both the resources and the opportunity to book in with me. Apologies for the website being a little problematic at the moment. But I assure you we'll be able to get you those resources and give you something to book in. So please make sure that you've done that. If anyone has any more questions or anything, please, as I said, happy for you to come off mute or to type them in there, and I'm happy to stick around and answer anything else that you might have because we want your podcast to be a success. Absolutely. And as I said, if you want to check out my podcast, it's called Biz Bites for Thought Leaders. If you aren't already, please find me and follow me on LinkedIn. Just send me a message when you can try to connect with me and tell me that and let me know that you're part of the masterclass, and I'll make sure we are connected. I often share parts of my podcast and other people's as well as part of what I do on there. I'm just going to take a sip of drink here. Does anyone else have any questions that you want to ask? Don't be shy if you are. And I thank you everyone. It's great to have so many of you online today. I know few people have had to drop off already, but I really appreciate everyone taking some time out at the start of their day. I'm assuming that everyone here is, from what we gathered, is I'm not sure if there's anyone based outside of Australia that's online at the moment. So for most people, it's probably going to be the start of the day, but there may be a few people who it's towards the end as well. So thank you for taking the time out to be part of it all. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate that. And everyone else who's listening in. As I said, well, it's an absolute pleasure to everyone. I'm glad you've got something out of it. And I hope that we can talk on the podcast journey together directly sometime soon. So thank you very much. Thanks, Gordon. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to leave it open for another moment or two. So please feel free. If you want to ask me a question, just jump on in. All right. See, there's a few of you still there. All right. I'll give you another moment or two. I know some of you may be listening in and doing other things in the background there as well, so totally appreciate that. So we're going to give another moment or two, then we're going to end the session. Thanks, Joe. Look forward to being in touch with you. That would be great. All right. Thank you, everyone. I think I'm going to wrap things up there. If it doesn't look like there's any further questions. So thank you again for everyone who stuck around and being a part of it. I really appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully having a conversation about your podcast journey together very, very soon. So thanks a lot, and we'll talk soon.